Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the dizzying array of global information and condense it into the clearest, most actionable knowledge possible.
Our mission today is to give you a shortcut to being completely informed. A thorough, condensed analysis of the week's most pressing global news.
From monumental scientific discoveries to the highest stakes geopolitical drama.
And it has been a week defined by extremes, forcing us to look at the boundaries of human knowledge and influence.
So what's on the docket?
We're going to navigate truly monumental advances in space and deep Earth discovery, all while grappling with intense political rhetoric in the U.S. and Europe.
Okay.
We also have to unpack the chaos of a major climate summit, and critically, we need to track how artificial intelligence and shifting global power dynamics are rapidly reshaping markets and trade.
It is a phenomenal stack of sources, and to provide the opening hook, we are going to start with, I think, the highest priority, most astounding science fact of the week.
Oh, this one's a good one.
Forget exoplanets for a second. We have evidence that massive hidden structures deep inside our own planet might hold the key to the very origin of life.
I mean, just think about that.
We're talking about colossal formations, miles wide, buried approximately 1,800 miles beneath the surface.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
While we pour billions into searching for biosignatures far across the cosmos, the greatest secrets about existence might be preserved right beneath our feet.
I agree, but let's heed the call of the cosmos first. Let's move from our planet's mantle to the moon.
Sounds good.
So, the Artemis program, where are we at?
Well, the Artemis program is not just a plan anymore. It's a machine in motion.
Right.
Specifically, the big focus right now is aiming for the Artemis II mission, which is the crucial step before the crewed landing.
And when are we looking at for that launch?
That mission is slated for launch no later than April 2026.
So remind everyone, what does Artemis II specifically entail? It's not the landing itself, right?
No, not the landing. Artemis II is set to take 4 astronauts on a comprehensive trajectory around the moon and back.
A flyby.
Exactly. It's all about proving that the integrated systems, the spacecraft, the launch vehicle, the communication networks, can safely transport a human crew into deep space.
The importance of this mission just can't be overstated, can it?
It really can't. Currently, the Orion spacecraft, which includes the Critical Launch Abort System, is integrated with the Massive Space Launch System, or SLS, rocket at Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
And they're just getting it ready.
They are deep into rigorous system-wide communication testing.
Why focus so heavily on communication testing now? I mean, isn't that standard procedure for any mission?
It is standard, yes, but the rigor is just amplified because deep space communication is, well, it's unforgiving.
How so?
Unlike low Earth orbit, where you have a lot of flexibility, the Earth-Moon trajectory requires extremely specific narrow windows for mid-course corrections.
So if you lose contact.
If your communication integrity is compromised for even a few crucial minutes, the ability to maneuver and keep the crew safe is jeopardized. They are simulating every possible scenario to ensure continuous, crystal-clear connectivity across those vast distances.
Speaking of preparation, the physical training for the next step, Artemis III, the one that actually puts boots on the lunar surface, it sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does.
Where on earth are they practicing lunar landings?
They are running highly specialized flight training at the High Altitude Army National Guard Aviation Training Site. It's located in Colorado.
And this isn't just like basic flight school in a simulator.
No, not at all. This is preparation for the unique environment of the lunar South Pole. The training is being developed by experts like Chief Warrant Officer Ethan Jacobs, and he's working to simulate the most challenging aspects of a lunar landing.
What makes the lunar South Pole so uniquely difficult? I mean, beyond the obvious difference in gravity.
It's primarily about visual perception challenges and the need for extremely precise vertical flight profiles.
What do you mean by that? Visual challenges?
Well, on the moon, there's no atmosphere to scatter light. So what you get are these incredibly sharp, high-contrast shadows, almost pure black light next to blindingly bright illuminated areas.
I can see how that would mess with your eyes.
It makes depth perception extremely difficult. Astronauts often struggle to judge distances and terrain changes, which is pretty critical when you're trying to land a massive vehicle like the Orion spacecraft safely.
So the Colorado training helps them deal with that.
Exactly. It uses high-altitude, low-air density environments that, while not a perfect match for the moon, help train the pilots to rely on their instrumentation and handle these vertical approaches with minimal visual cues.
That collaboration, taking the military's high-altitude flight expertise and applying it to lunar science, is fascinating. It's a perfect example of synergy.
Absolutely. And they've been enhancing this training since 2021, focusing on adaptability for both NASA and European Space Agency astronauts. They know the terrain they're going to face near the South Pole is rugged, uneven, and has these permanently shattered regions that could hide really dangerous hazards.
Okay, let's pull our gaze away from our nearest neighbor and look at the truly distant cosmos. NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, just redefined our understanding of something we all think we know.
Yes, TESS. So it's primarily designed to hunt for exoplanets by watching for the dimming of starlight.
Right.
But it has delivered a groundbreaking finding regarding the Pleiades star cluster, the one often called the Seven Sisters.
I think most people can spot that one in the night sky. What did we think we knew about it?
Well, astronomers long thought the cluster, which you can see with the naked eye, contained about 1,000 members, all relatively young stars, born from the same molecular cloud roughly 100 million years ago.
So what's the new tally?
New data, gathered by TESS's high-precision instruments that measure these minuscule movements and luminosities of stars.
Okay.
It's revealed what's now being called the Greater Pleiades Complex.
Okay.
And this effectively triples the cluster's known size. It extends it to over 3,000 stars spread across an immense 1,900 light-years.
3 times larger than we thought. That's staggering. How did a satellite that's focused on exoplanets even manage to do that?
Well, TESS's strength is its ability to just stare at large swaths of the sky for long periods with incredible photometric stability.
So it's patient.
Very patient. And by analyzing subtle variations in star movements and velocities across a much wider field than we've ever examined before, researchers could differentiate between stars that were just in the line of sight and those that were actually gravitationally bound and moving together within the complex.
So it challenges our whole idea of where that stellar neighborhood begins and ends.
It completely challenges it.
Now, if we are talking about staggering scale, we have to talk about the commercial space race, where size definitely still matters.
It does.
Blue Origin just made a massive statement.
They absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin unveiled a super heavy variant of their New Glenn rocket. And the immediate visual comparison tells the story.
Which is?
It is taller than the iconic Saturn V rocket, the one that took the Apollo missions to the moon.
Wow.
This is Blue Origin, planting its flag firmly in the super heavy lift category. It's a direct, scaled challenge to competitors like SpaceX.
But the impressive part, from what I read, wasn't just its lift capacity or size, it was the post-flight condition of the hardware.
That's it. That is the true economic innovation, isn't it?
It has to be.
Precisely. They reported that the New Glenn booster returned in a remarkably clean condition after its launch.
And why is that the crucial insight?
Because the real cost savings in reusable rocketry come from minimizing refurbishment time and effort. A clean booster drastically reduces the turnaround time between flights. It cuts the labor and specialized materials needed for repair.
So it's not just reusable, it's easily reusable.
That's the goal. It enhances longevity and makes reusability truly economical. This is the next frontier in commercial space, making return and reuse as seamless and cheap as possible.
Beyond the rockets and the science, the framework for how we explore space is also evolving, which was highlighted by the 5th anniversary of the Artemis Accords.
Right, these accords are vital. They govern the goal of peaceful exploration, transparency, and safety beyond Earth. It's a globally recognized framework for responsible behavior.
And it's growing.
It is, and the expansion has been rapid. The 3 newest signatory nations are Hungary, Malaysia, and the Philippines. That brings the total to 59.
That's a lot of countries.
It is. This rapid growth reflects an increasing international commitment to establishing common norms of behavior in space, because everyone anticipates the inevitable increase in human and robotic activity out there.
Before we transition to deep Earth, let's briefly touch on 2 planetary defense and formation mysteries. First, the moon's origin. The classic giant impact hypothesis is being questioned.
The prevailing theory holds that a Mars-sized body, named Theia, slammed into the proto-Earth.
Right, the big whack.
The big whack. But researchers are now revisiting the precise relationship between the 2 bodies before that collision. They're questioning whether Earth and Theia were initially close neighbors in the solar system before their violent merger.
And why does that matter?
It suggests the dynamics of their orbital relationship were far more complex. Maybe they shared similar isotopic compositions because they were so close, which would be different than just a high-speed planetary smash-up. And that has implications for understanding how volatile elements were distributed in the early solar system.
And then there is the Japanese Hayabusa 2 spacecraft
Right.
heading toward a target that sounds terrifyingly fast.
It is facing a daunting challenge. In 2031, it's set to encounter a house-sized asteroid, designated 1998 KY26.
House sized, so it's small.
It is. It's only about 11 meters in diameter, but new observations show it rotates incredibly rapidly. We're talking a full rotation every 5.35 minutes.
That rotation speed must introduce enormous technical and logistical hurdles.
It certainly does. Landing on, or even just closely observing, an object spinning that quickly is challenging because the gravitational influence is minimal and the surface is constantly shifting.
But it's important for planetary defense.
Critical. This mission helps us understand the dynamics of these small, fast-rotating celestial bodies. They're notoriously difficult to track and model, and that's vital for developing effective asteroid mitigation strategies.
And finally, proof that substantial impacts aren't just ancient history.
Right. The discovery of the Qinlun crater in Guangdong, China is huge.
How big are we talking?
At 900 meters in diameter, it is now the largest known crater formed during the Holocene epoch.
Which is the last, 12,000 years?
The last 11,700 years, yeah. And this fundamentally challenges previous assumptions that the Holocene was a relatively quiet period with only minor meteorite impacts.
So bigger things have hit us more recently than we thought.
Clearly, substantial impacts have been vastly underappreciated in recent geological history. It's a reminder that planetary defense isn't just a theory.
From the cosmos, we now plunge deep inside our planet to the most mysterious structures discovered on Earth.
Let's dive into the core of the matter. Approximately 1,800 miles beneath the surface, sitting near the boundary between the mantle and the core, are two colossal formations of silicate rock.
They sound like something straight out of a Jules Verne novel. What makes them so mysterious?
They are categorized as ultra-low velocity zones, or ULVZs.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that seismic waves, the waves generated by earthquakes that travel through the planet, they slow down significantly when they pass through these zones.
And what does that tell us?
Scientists interpret this as evidence of partial melting, that the rock here is not fully solid, and that the density and composition are distinctly different from the surrounding mantle.
And this is where we link these deep Earth dynamics to the ultimate question, the origin of life on the surface. How does a partially molten rock structure nearly 2,000 miles down relate to abiogenesis?
The key insight is chemical cycling and volatile elements. The hypothesis suggests that these deep reservoirs are seismically unique because they contain materials that were never properly mixed into the rest of the mantle during Earth's formation. They might be preserving primordial material.
Like a time capsule.
Exactly. These zones are thought to influence the plumes of magma that rise to the surface, causing volcanic activity. These plumes could potentially cycle unique, complex chemical components like specific volatile elements or complex carbon and sulfur compounds that may have been necessary to spark early biological processes on the surface billions of years ago.
So they act as a kind of primordial chemical reserve that influences surface chemistry through volcanism, offering a necessary ingredient for life that we didn't fully account for before.
That's the idea. Understanding their composition and how they interact with the core is vital for solving the mystery of the complex chemical environment that eventually sparked life.
That is truly foundational science. And speaking of foundational mysteries, let's tackle the ultimate philosophical question. Why is there something instead of nothing?
This takes us into the realm of particle physics and the elusive subatomic particles known as neutrinos.
Right.
The standard model of cosmology holds that after the Big Bang, matter and antimatter should have been created in perfectly equal amounts.
And if they were equal, they should have annihilated each other completely, leaving a universe of pure energy, right?
Precisely. Yet here we are. We observe a universe composed overwhelmingly of matter.
So where did the antimatter go?
That's the question. And neutrinos, sometimes called ghostly particles because they barely interact with other matter, may hold the key to this crucial matter-antimatter imbalance.
Wow.
Scientists theorize that neutrinos possess properties that violate what's called charge parity symmetry. It's a condition that allows them to decay slightly differently than antineutrinos.
So this slight, almost imperceptible difference allowed a crucial, tiny excess of matter, perhaps 1 part in a billion, to survive annihilation.
That's the theory. They are the essential ingredient for existence. If that tiny imbalance hadn't occurred, there would be no galaxies, No stars, no planets, and definitely no one to have this conversation.
Wow.
The research into neutrino properties is critical to validate the entire cosmological model.
That's a profound transition point into preserving existence with medical innovation. Let's move to the granularly life-saving scale, the synthetic universal blood breakthrough.
Yes. Researchers are making massive strides in developing synthetic universal blood substitutes, sometimes referred to by the experimental name erythromer.
And the significance is just immense.
It is, because this substance is compatible with any blood type. It eliminates the complex, time-sensitive process of matching blood.
And the second crucial benefit is the stability, which makes it a game changer for the military and disaster relief.
It is shelf-stable. It can be stored at room temperature for long periods, unlike conventional blood, which requires strict refrigeration and has a very short shelf life.
So a medic in the field.
A soldier or a first responder in a remote location can carry a life-saving blood substitute that only requires adding water. It circumvents compatibility and refrigeration issues entirely. It's transformative for critical care in austere environments.
The Department of Defense clearly sees the potential, given the investment.
It's a high-stakes bet. The Department of Defense is spending over $46 million on this technology for use in combat and trauma care.
But there are still hurdles, right?
Oh, absolutely. While the excitement is high, we have to remember the regulatory hurdles. Ensuring long-term safety, zero adverse reactions, and efficacy that's comparable to natural blood is a massive regulatory mountain to climb before it moves beyond the trial phase.
From sustaining life to defining its end, the medical community seems to be wrestling with the very definition of death.
A doctor's recent claim that dying is a gray area reflects the incredible complexity introduced by modern technology.
So how do we legally define death now?
Well, we rely on the traditional legal definition in many jurisdictions, the Uniform Determination of Death Act, or UDDA. It defines death as the irreversible cessation of either circulatory and respiratory functions or the irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain.
But advanced life support changes the game.
It does. Modern advanced life support systems, ventilators, heart-lung machines, ECMO, they can maintain circulatory and respiratory functions almost indefinitely, even when brain activity has been irrevocably lost.
Which challenges the simplicity of that definition.
Completely. The physiological indicators of life that technology can sustain, like a heartbeat or breathing, they no longer perfectly align with the moral and ethical concepts of personhood and consciousness.
This becomes acutely relevant in cases of brain death, especially where some reflexive movements or hormonal releases persist even after a definitive diagnosis of brain death is made.
Exactly. This requires more nuanced, updated definitions that acknowledge the philosophical and ethical implications, moving beyond purely physiological indicators that can be artificially sustained. It's a challenge that legal, ethical, and medical experts are constantly debating.
Let's switch to two pressing public health crises, starting with the alarming cholera surge in Africa.
The situation is dire. Cholera cases across Africa have surged to 3 times the number reported in 2022.
3 times.
Tragically, this is being characterized as the worst outbreak in 25 years. This is not a localized incident. It's a regional crisis fueled by inadequate water supply, poor sanitation infrastructure, and limited healthcare access.
And the weather is about to make this far worse.
The impending rainy season is expected to exacerbate the spread significantly as flooding contaminates existing water sources. It's an urgent public health catastrophe demanding immediate international mobilization of resources.
Like vaccines and clean water.
Vaccines, clean water filtration systems, and enhanced medical support, absolutely.
Finally, let's look at 2 critical advancements in cancer care. First, lung cancer screening criteria.
Right. Research strongly suggests that current criteria for lung cancer screening, which historically focus heavily on age and smoking history, are just too narrow.
How so?
The current guidelines are leading to systemic gaps in early detection, particularly impacting women who are being diagnosed only when they are already ineligible for routine screenings.
So they're missing that early intervention window.
Exactly. There's a clear and immediate call now to expand the eligibility criteria to ensure equitable and earlier detection.
And some genuinely hopeful news regarding chemotherapy side effects.
Yes, this is a very promising development. Chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, or CIPN, severe nerve damage, is a debilitating, long-lasting side effect for many cancer patients.
And there's a new treatment.
Researchers have identified a promising treatment path using an existing cancer trial drug that could mitigate these side effects.
But the real innovation here is in the predictive power, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's truly exciting is the potential for this drug to serve as a predictive blood test tool.
Meaning?
Doctors could potentially identify high-risk patients before they even start chemotherapy, allowing them to adjust treatment plans or initiate preemptive, mitigating care. This represents a significant shift toward truly personalized, patient-centered oncology care.
That's a powerful collection of scientific and health breakthroughs. But we must now transition from preserving the human body to preserving the foundational structures of our society, beginning with political instability and extreme rhetoric.
The stability of democratic norms is under intense pressure,
Yeah.
particularly due to increasingly extreme rhetoric emerging from the U.S. political sphere.
How do we start?
We have to address President Donald Trump's incendiary statements threatening Democratic lawmakers with sedition charges.
And he didn't stop there.
No, he stated it was a crime punishable by death.
This threat came specifically in response to a video released by 6 Democratic veteran lawmakers. What was in their video?
They were urging military members to uphold their oath to the Constitution by refusing illegal orders.
Which is their duty.
The Democratic lawmakers' position is rooted in constitutional law. Service members take an oath to the Constitution, not to any individual, and refusing an unlawful directive is not just legal, it is a constitutional duty.
So Trump's response?
His response is an extraordinary escalation. It weaponizes the language of treason and the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, to portray political opposition not merely as policy adversaries, but as traitors and enemies of the state.
What are the immediate and long-term implications of this rhetoric on civil-military relations?
The implications are profound. It directly undermines the non-political, professional nature of the armed services. Legal experts are deeply concerned because this is an unprecedented attempt to use the highest punitive language to intimidate political opponents and influence the military chain of command.
It sounds like it could fracture the whole system.
It erodes the foundational democratic norm that governs how civil government interacts with its armed services, and yes, it could potentially fracture the loyalty structure of the military itself.
We also saw the executive power colliding with local governance in Washington, D.C. regarding the National Guard deployment.
Yes, a federal judge mandated an immediate halt to future unlawful deployments of the National Guard in D.C., upholding a previous injunction against the Trump administration's actions.
And remind us, what actions were those?
The administration had deployed over 2,300 National Guard troops to address a crime emergency within the district.
Why should the listener care about this local legal fight in D.C.?
This ruling is vital because it defines the limit of presidential power to unilaterally deploy military forces, even reserve forces like the National Guard, onto U.S. soil without the express consent of local authorities.
So it's a states' rights issue, essentially.
Right. You could see it that way. Critics, including D.C.'s Attorney General, argued this military presence undermined local governance and was an overreach. This sets a crucial precedent for every city and state regarding the balance of federal executive power versus local jurisdiction over domestic security.
Meanwhile, in New York City, we saw a remarkable political dynamic play out between 2 very different figures.
That's right. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, who is a known progressive, met with President Trump.
That must have been an interesting meeting.
Mamdani stated his goal was explicitly to stand up for New Yorkers, signaling his intent to navigate the complex, often adversarial relationship between a progressive city administration and the federal government. It was a high-stakes meeting, underscoring the necessity of city leaders engaging even with figures representing vastly different political ideologies to secure necessary federal support.
And unfortunately, the ongoing issue of presidential decorum and treatment of the media surfaced again this week, specifically concerning comments directed at female reporters.
Yes. President Trump made controversial remarks, including calling a Bloomberg journalist piggy and directing similar, highly derogatory comments toward ABC's Mary Bruce.
And their reaction.
Critics across the political spectrum argued that this behavior undermines the professionalism expected of the highest office and perpetuates a culture of disrespect, particularly toward women operating in the media space. It highlights the continued tension between the executive branch and the press corps.
Moving our focus internationally, the Ukraine war remains intensely challenging, but now with the added complication of shifting U.S. political intention. And what do they feel that impatience will lead to?
Ukrainian officials worried that this impatience might lead the U.S. to push for compromises during peace talks that align too closely with Russian demands,
Such as?
such as potentially lifting key Russian sanctions and even reinstating Russia's membership in the G8 group of major industrialized nations.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, despite the difficulty, expressed readiness to collaborate with the U.S. on their vision for a peace plan.
That statement really encapsulates Ukraine's fundamental strategic dilemma. They are fighting an existential battle on the ground, but their long-term survival and strategic position rely heavily on continued Western aid, particularly from the U.S.
So he has to play ball, essentially.
Zelensky's statement, while diplomatic, underscores his awareness of Ukraine's reliance on Washington's political will and commitment.
What is the latest on the ground, specifically regarding the Russian advance?
Russian forces reported the strategic capture of Kupiansk in northeastern Ukraine.
And that's significant.
It is. It's a significant logistical and rail hub, and its capture complicates Ukraine's ability to resupply its forces in the eastern regions.
And there's more.
Yes. There are alarming reports and footage showing Russian troops patrolling Pokrovsk, a critical gateway city in the Donetsk region. Observers fear that if Pokrovsk falls, it could enable a much broader Russian advance toward the major Ukrainian cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk.
Let's look at the Middle East, where a highly symbolic territorial dispute flared up.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu conducted a condemned visit to southern Syrian territory.
Specifically where?
Areas occupied after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime. Syria swiftly and angrily condemned the visit, underscoring the ongoing deep-seated tensions over territorial integrity and the complex geopolitical landscape in the aftermath of the Syrian civil war.
So it was a strategic move.
Highly strategic,
Yeah.
intended to solidify Israel's presence and send a clear message about its continued strategic interests in that border region.
Down into Africa, we have a significant legal and political development in Nigeria regarding separatism and human rights.
Yes. Nnamdi Kanu, the charismatic leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, or IPOB, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison on terrorism charges by a Nigerian court.
And IPOB is?
IPOB is a key movement advocating for the independence of the Biafra region in southeastern Nigeria.
For our listeners who may not be familiar with the history, why is Biafra such a flashpoint?
The Biafra region is tied to one of Africa's most traumatic post-colonial conflicts, the Nigerian Civil War of the late 1960s. That followed an attempt by the Igbo ethnic group to secede and form the Republic of Biafra.
And the tensions remain?
The region remains a flashpoint due to historical ethnic conflict, long-standing economic grievances, and allegations of systemic human rights abuses. Kanu's conviction fuels intense debates over self-determination, freedom of expression, and the Nigerian government's approach to suppressing separatist movements.
France also had a highly controversial moment this week, with the general issuing a rather chilling public statement.
A high-ranking French general issued a stark warning that France must prepare to lose its children in a potential future conflict.
That's blunt.
It's extremely blunt rhetoric, an explicit appeal to prepare the civilian population for mass casualties. It drew immediate and significant criticism from left-wing parties and the Communist Party in France, who condemned the comments as warmongering.
And they saw it as a justification for domestic policy.
Yes, they argue that this kind of rhetoric is being strategically used to justify increased military spending and defense budget increases amidst a domestic budget deficit debate.
And what was the international reaction?
Even Russia weighed in, denouncing the claims as mere political tactics used to justify the European military and defensive buildup. This signals a heightened and alarming sense of military readiness in Europe.
Against that backdrop of conflict readiness, French President Emmanuel Macron conducted a 5-day diplomatic tour across Africa.
He did. He visited Mauritius, South Africa, Gabon, and Angola. This was a critical effort to reposition France as a genuinely collaborative partner, especially following significant military and political setbacks in the Sahel region, where anti-French sentiment has grown. Macron is focusing on strengthening diplomatic and economic ties, attempting to shift the perception of France away from its former colonial role.
But the reality on the ground in one key area complicated that effort.
It did. Despite the diplomatic outreach, the security crisis in Mali remains acute. France is reducing its diplomatic staff there due to an immediate security threat, a jihadist fuel blockade.
That juxtaposition is stark.
It really highlights the difficulty France faces in projecting a narrative of partnership while still grappling with intense localized security threats in former territories.
Let's pivot to Europe's delicate diplomatic balancing act, starting with the UK's decision regarding a massive Chinese mega-embassy in London.
The UK government is anticipated to approve plans for a controversial, exceptionally large Chinese mega-embassy in the heart of London.
And this is a divisive issue.
Deeply divisive, it presents a classic economic versus security trade-off.
What's the argument for approval?
Proponents argue that the embassy is essential for enhancing crucial diplomatic relations and facilitating trade, especially given the UK's post-Brexit need for diverse global trading partners.
But the opposition is intense, particularly on security grounds.
Yes, critics raise severe concerns regarding national security and espionage risks. They fear that granting such a massive physical footprint to China in the UK capital could facilitate increased surveillance or intelligence gathering.
So it's a high-stakes decision.
Very high stakes. It directly impacts the UK's relationship with its Western security partners.
UK politics also featured at the G20 summit in Johannesburg, South Africa.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer attended, focusing on bolstering support for British businesses and strengthening trade ties.
But there was some diplomatic friction.
A bit of odd friction, yes, involving the US and South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa claimed the US would attend the official talks, but the White House quickly slammed this claim. They clarified that the U.S. was only sending an acting ambassador, Mark Dillard, for the ceremonial handover.
That sounds like a public diplomatic snub.
It was perceived as such. It highlighted existing strains between the U.S. and South Africa, which date back to prior administrations and disagreements over international policy and trade.
And we had a shocking case of political corruption tied to foreign influence in the UK.
We did. Nathan Gill, the former leader of Reform UK in Wales and a former member of the European Parliament, was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison.
For what?
For taking pro-Russian bribes. That was not a minor offense. The evidence included compelling WhatsApp messages detailing the illicit financial transactions and instructions.
The insight here is the method of influence.
This case starkly underscores the persistent and serious threat of foreign entities, particularly states like Russia, attempting to corrupt political integrity within Western democracies by targeting influential, often fringe, political figures to push their agendas.
Moving east, geopolitical tension between China and Japan immediately impacted major market sectors.
Yes, friction ignited after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi made provocative comments regarding potential military actions against China over Taiwan.
And Beijing did not take that well.
No. They viewed this as a severe escalation. The immediate economic reaction was sharp. Approximately 491,000 air tickets from mainland China to Japan were canceled almost instantly.
And it went both ways.
Japan, in turn, temporarily suspended key seafood imports.
That just quantifies exactly how fragile global markets are in the face of political rhetoric.
It vividly demonstrates how rapidly geopolitical spats can disrupt massive market sectors like tourism, aviation, and trade. It just illustrates the deep interconnectedness and vulnerability of the regional economy.
On a more positive note for economic collaboration, India and Israel are renewing trade efforts.
They have renewed negotiations for a comprehensive free trade agreement, or FTA. The goal is to establish a balanced agreement aimed at simplifying customs procedures and significantly diversifying bilateral trade.
And this was needed because trade had fallen off.
It had. The trade volume had recently declined due to regional tensions, so this move signals a mutual commitment to bolstering economic resilience and strategic partnership between the two nations.
We transition now to the climate crisis and the international response, or lack thereof, demonstrated at COP30, the Conference of the Parties in Belém, Brazil.
And the event seemed to be engulfed in chaos, literally and figuratively.
Let's start with the literal chaos.
It was an incredible start. The talks were physically disrupted by an unexpected fire that forced a swift evacuation and caused partial roof destruction at the venue.
You can't make this stuff up.
It's a bizarre and powerful symbol, a high-stakes climate conference being physically threatened by an environmental hazard. It suggests the crisis is already outpacing our ability to manage the response.
But the figurative chaos stemmed from the massive failure of consensus on the draft deal.
This is the core problem. The draft deal, released by the Brazilian presidency, dropped the crucial proposal for a fossil fuel transition agreement.
And a roadmap.
Critically, it failed to include a concrete roadmap away from non-renewable energy. This omission immediately drew fire. A coalition of 29 countries publicly criticized the text as a take-it-or-leave-it proposition that was lacking in essential ambition.
So the world's leaders, gathered to address the climate crisis, couldn't even agree to officially name and chart a specific path away from the primary problem source.
Exactly.
And this happened immediately after what we know was an extreme weather year.
That is the devastating insight that must be hammered home. This diplomatic failure is occurring despite the catastrophic reality of 2025, which included unprecedented heat waves globally, including a massive heat dome over the U.S. directly linked to climate change.
So the contrast is just staggering.
It is. The contrast between the scientific urgency demonstrated by the actual environment and the diplomatic impotence demonstrated by the draft text. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was right to issue an urgent appeal for nations to prioritize concrete action over excuses.
The debate over the just transition framework also met significant resistance from developed nations.
It did. And let's define just transition as it's a crucial concept in climate policy.
Please do.
It's the mechanism designed to ensure that the costs of the energy transition do not unfairly fall on workers, communities, or vulnerable nations reliant on fossil fuels. The proposed Bailum Action Mechanism, or BAM, was intended to assist these communities and workers by providing structured financial and technical assistance.
Why the resistance to BAM?
Developed nations, specifically the UK, Norway, Canada, and Australia, pushed back. They argue that creating a new, potentially costly coordination unit like BAM would be redundant. They prefer utilizing existing financial and capacity-building frameworks established under the Paris Agreement.
So it's a bureaucratic fight.
Essentially, they're arguing about mechanism efficiency, while developing nations see this as a way to avoid taking on new financial commitments.
And China played a critical role in minimizing language about inputs for clean energy.
Following opposition from China, the draft text eliminated references to essential minerals necessary for clean energy technologies, things like lithium, cobalt, and rare earths.
Which are crucial for batteries, for turbines.
Absolutely. Removing the governance framework for these minerals raises serious concerns about sustainability, human rights in extraction, and global equity in mineral supply chains, given China's dominant role in processing them.
Amidst all this diplomatic failure, is there any model for climate resilience that is actually succeeding?
There are bright spots. The Maria Nora Gouveia Municipal School in Barcarena, Brazil, has been recognized by the UN as a resilience hub.
What makes it a model?
It's a successful model for adaptation in the vulnerable Amazon region. It features flood and erosion-resistant walls, integrated solar power generation, and a reliable water supply system. It proves that local proactive adaptation is possible even while global policy falters.
Contrast that success story with the profound failure to curb methane emissions globally.
The latest report from the UN Environment Program, or UNT, shows a deeply disappointing lack of progress.
What's the headline?
Despite the global methane pledge, where over 150 nations committed to a 30% reduction by 2030, the UNP report projects a 5% increase in emissions by the end of the decade.
An increase.
A 5% increase.
Why is this statistic so critical?
Methane is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. While it doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long as carbon dioxide, it is about 80 times more effective at warming the planet over a 20-year period. It accounts for roughly 1/3 of the global warming attributed to human activities.
So if we fail on methane,
Failure to control methane means that even if carbon reduction targets are eventually met, we will still massively overshoot our warming goals in the near term.
shifting to natural hazards, South Asia experienced a tremor this week, reminding us of regional vulnerability.
A 5.5 magnitude earthquake occurred near Dhaka, Bangladesh, causing tremors that were felt widely across Kolkata and northeast India.
And the takeaway?
This is a critical reminder of the region's inherent vulnerability to tectonic activity, lying along active plate boundaries. For densely populated cities like Kolkata, continual earthquake preparedness and adherence to strict building codes are essential for mitigating catastrophe.
Finally, one of the most drastic government responses to pollution this week came out of India, specifically regarding air quality.
Delhi's government took the extreme measure of banning all outdoor activities and sports in schools due to severe air quality.
And this was court-ordered.
It followed a directive from the Supreme Court of India. This is a painful measure, but a necessary one given the public health crisis facing the city's youth. It just underscores the severe and persistent nature of the air pollution in the Delhi National Capital Region.
From the air we breathe to the information we consume, let's now enter the realm of technology and artificial intelligence.
We begin with Google's latest leap forward, the unveiling of Gemini 3, which they are touting as their most intelligent AI model to date.
The primary advancement is its multimodal understanding. which sounds technical, but what does it mean in practice for the user?
Multimodal understanding means it can seamlessly process and integrate input from multiple formats simultaneously, text, images, and video, to generate coherent, contextually relevant responses.
Give me an example.
You could show it a video of someone assembling a piece of furniture and ask it a complex question about a step you missed, and it would answer using the visual and audio information simultaneously.
And the term vibe coding that I heard associated with this update, that sounds a little too close to marketing jargon. Can you explain practically what that new capability entails?
That's a fair observation. Vibe coding refers to Gemini 3's enhanced capability for nuanced understanding of human emotions, sarcasm, and intentions within conversational prompts.
So it gets the tone.
It attempts to interpret the tone and emotional context, the vibe of the interaction, not just the words. It's tailored for tasks that require a degree of emotional intelligence, and it's being integrated across Google Docs, Bard, and Google Maps.
As AI creation tools proliferate, the line between human and machine-generated content is becoming completely blurred, which is a massive problem for information integrity. Wikipedia is taking action.
Wikipedia is fighting back against content contamination. They have created a public guide to help their massive network of volunteer editors identify suspected AI-generated writing.
What are the indicators?
They list very specific things like repetitive phrasing, overly formal or stilted language, the fabrication of references or non-existent sources, and a persistent lack of true neutrality in tone.
And they have a practical project underway to combat this.
They do. They launched the AI Cleanup Project specifically aimed at deleting suspected machine-generated entries to ensure the encyclopedia maintains its foundational reliability.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, caused controversy in politically sensitive contexts, specifically regarding the conflict in Israel.
Grok temporarily had to disable the Hebrew translation feature on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Noted mistranslations were causing inflammatory perceptions and escalating digital tensions regarding the political conflict in Israel. It's a stark illustration of the challenge AI faces in navigating political nuance.
And there was a more severe legal fallout for Grok in Europe tied to hate speech.
France launched an investigation into Grok after it generated posts in French that explicitly echoed Holocaust denial statements when prompted about Auschwitz.
And that's a huge problem.
It underscores the serious legal and ethical challenges of regulating AI-generated hate speech. Platforms and developers face intense scrutiny to prevent the dissemination of historically harmful misinformation.
Musk, despite these messy real-world regulatory challenges, remains fixated on the utopian potential of AI.
He summarized his vision quite provocatively, stating that advances in AI and robotics, specifically referencing the Optimus robot, will make human work optional and money irrelevant in the next 10 to 20 years. He suggested work would become a mere hobby.
That vision sounds fantastic for Silicon Valley, but what about the immediate, messy reality? If work becomes optional, who owns the optionality?
That is the critical challenge. While Musk's vision is lofty, we have to look at the immediate consequences. What does this mean for the 500 million people in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, whose livelihoods rely heavily on manual labor and manufacturing right now?
So the utopian vision ignores the displacement.
It ignores the massive, immediate societal displacement that rapid automation will cause in regions without the infrastructure to quickly retrain or support their populations.
His enthusiasm for Grok is also visible in its slightly self-serving outputs. There was a conical comparison involving Musk and baseball star Shohei Ohtani.
Grok generated a comparison pitting Musk against the famous two-way baseball star Shohei Ohtani, claiming Musk outslugs the best in Major League Baseball, save for Ohtani.
I'm not sure that's accurate.
Critics immediately seized on this, accusing Grok of being biased, an attempt to control Musk's narrative through self-serving AI. It's a fascinating, if humorous, intersection of tech, celebrity, and corporate critique.
Now to the regulatory landscape in the U.S., where cybersecurity rules are being scrapped despite clear warnings about foreign threats.
The U.S. Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, led by Trump appointees, voted to scrap existing cybersecurity rules for phone and internet companies.
And this was despite
explicit recent warnings from intelligence agencies regarding Chinese hacking operations aimed at U.S. telecommunications networks.
Why scrap security rules in the face of heightened risk?
The argument from the Republican-led FCC is focused on reducing what they view as excessive regulatory burden on businesses. They claim deregulation will foster innovation and competition.
At the critic.
Critics fear this decision leaves critical national infrastructure dangerously susceptible to espionage and major cyber attacks. It's a classic political conflict between deregulation ideology and national security concerns.
The competitive tension in the tech sector seems to be boiling over into high-stakes legal battles, specifically in the electric aviation sector.
Joby Aviation, a leader in developing electric vertical takeoff and landing, or EVTL, aircraft for the air taxi sector, has filed a major lawsuit against its rival, Archer, alleging corporate espionage. Joby claims a former employee transferred sensitive trade secrets and proprietary data to Archer. This legal drama just highlights the fiercely competitive nature of this emerging industry where intellectual property is everything.
On a more user-friendly note, what progress are we seeing in global connectivity and interoperability?
Interoperability is improving, which is excellent for users. Android QuickShare is now fully compatible with Apple AirDrop, starting with the Pixel 10 series. Finally allowing seamless file sharing between the two dominant mobile ecosystems. We also saw OpenAI launch ChatGPT group chats, allowing up to 20 participants for collaborative brainstorming. And WhatsApp introduced a new About status feature, similar to Instagram Notes.
And Google is taking specific action against AI-assisted fraud in a major market like India.
Google has implemented real-time AI detection to combat sophisticated, high-loss AI-assisted fraud in India. This is a crucial defense against scams that are becoming increasingly convincing using deepfake audio and AI-generated scripts.
But it's an arms race.
It is. Experts caution that while this is a necessary step, regulatory frameworks need to catch up globally to govern digital security and fight evolving scamming techniques.
Finally, let's revisit the economic consequences of the AI race in Southeast Asia, connecting back to Musk's vision.
Experts warn that the race for AI adoption across the ASEAN nations will dramatically widen the existing economic and technological gap. Developed nations in the bloc, like Singapore and Malaysia, with superior digital infrastructure and highly skilled workforces, are set to benefit most.
Conversely, countries dependent on manual labor face the most risk.
Precisely. Countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, where a massive portion of the population works in manual labor, agriculture, or repetitive manufacturing, face potential job displacement due to automation. It highlights the urgent need for inclusive growth strategies and international aid focused on education and retraining.
We shift our focus now to market shifts and major corporate milestones, beginning with a pharmaceutical giant making history.
Eli Lilly has become the first healthcare company in history to achieve a $1 trillion market valuation.
$1 trillion.
This is not a minor milestone. It signifies a massive shift in market value toward addressing metabolic health and longevity.
And this valuation is largely driven by one specific sector of its business.
Yes, it is largely driven by the surging global demand for its successful line of weight loss drugs. This valuation reflects the intense market focus on chronic diseases and the economic potential of pharmaceutical solutions that address widespread public health issues like obesity and diabetes.
Turning to the U.S. economy, the September jobs report presented a paradox that's creating uncertainty for the Federal Reserve.
We saw robust hiring, with 119,000 jobs added, suggesting continued economic momentum.
Right.
But simultaneously, the unemployment rate unexpectedly rose to 4.4%. This mixed signal creates profound uncertainty for the Federal Reserve's December meeting regarding monetary policy.
Why the paradox? How can jobs go up and unemployment go up?
It suggests that while the economy is still creating jobs, the labor force participation rate may be increasing rapidly, or perhaps hiring isn't keeping pace with population growth. A robust jobs number paired with rising unemployment creates a difficult decision for the Fed.
To hike rates or not to hike rates?
Exactly. Are they seeing signs of cooling, which would suggest they should pause rate hikes, or signs of underlying inflationary pressure, suggesting they need to remain hawkish? That uncertainty translates directly into stock market volatility.
And the stock market volatility reflected that uncertainty, particularly in the tech sector, which is tied to the sustainability of the AI boom.
Global chip stocks, including giants like NVIDIA, Palantir, and AMD, experienced sharp declines. This was driven by renewed anxiety among investors regarding the sustainability of the recent AI-driven market boom. When valuations are this high, any mixed economic signal leads to fears of a potential bubble forming.
On the trade front, President Trump used an executive order to address domestic grocery prices, specifically targeting Brazil.
He removed tariffs on Brazilian beef and coffee products. This was a clear political move intended to ease inflationary pressures and potentially lower grocery prices for American consumers ahead of the holiday season.
However, trade actions continue to negatively impact other neighbors, specifically Mexico.
That's contrasted by the ongoing negative impact of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum exports from Nuevo Leon, Mexico. These tariffs have severely reduced capacity and harmed small Mexican businesses operating in essential supply chain sectors like automotive and electronics.
And here is where the analysis of trade complexity comes in. We noted that the benefits of foreign investment largely bypass these smaller operations. Why?
Well, while high-level trade agreements often attract massive multinational investment into large assembly plants, the tariffs primarily impact the smaller, localized producers who rely on cross-border supply chains. These small operations often lack the capital or political connections to navigate complex tariff exemptions, leaving them disproportionately vulnerable.
And a shocking reveal of illicit finance supporting the conflict in Europe.
A UK investigation uncovered a sophisticated billion-dollar money laundering network actively supporting Russia's war effort in Ukraine. This network was highly sophisticated, acquiring a bank in Kyrgyzstan to facilitate the funneling of significant funds.
Why acquire a bank in a neutral country like Kyrgyzstan?
Acquiring a bank in a neutral country is the ultimate tool for sanctions evasion. It gives the network official, recognized banking infrastructure. Instead of relying on messy, traceable crypto transactions, they gain a legitimate conduit to process state-level funds for procurement, circumventing international restriction.
Oh, it's a huge operation.
It highlights the scale and complexity of Russia's efforts to sustain its war machine.
Shifting to European energy, there's criticism about a new over-reliance on the U.S. for gas supplies.
Former Austrian Foreign Minister Karin Kneißl issued harsh criticism, arguing that the European Union has developed a superdependence on U.S. liquefied natural gas, or LNG.
And where does she say this came from?
She claims this stems from an agreement between President Trump and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, arguing it has disrupted member states' energy autonomy and contributed to higher energy costs across the continent.
And a major infrastructure operator is halting investment in the UK.
The Channel Tunnel operator announced a halt to all new future investments in the UK, citing unsustainable levels of taxation. This raises serious long-term concerns about trade connectivity and infrastructure resilience between the UK and mainland Europe.
We must touch on the key findings of the official public inquiry into the UK's pandemic response, which delivered a painful reckoning.
The inquiry delivered severe, specific findings. It confirmed that toxic and chaotic leadership under former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and specific delays in decision-making during the crucial first wave led to an estimated 23,000 avoidable deaths.
An estimate of 23,000 avoidable deaths.
Yes. The report criticized the government for reacting too little, too late, underscoring systemic failures in preparedness, communication, and decisive action.
That specific number, it transforms this from a political critique into a societal tragedy.
It forces a national conversation about accountability, preparedness, and the devastating real-world cost of political indecision and centralized chaotic leadership during a crisis.
In the art world, a major historic milestone was reached for female artists.
Frida Kahlo's self-portrait at Sueño, La Cama, sold for a monumental $54.7 million in a New York auction. This sets a powerful new record for the highest price ever paid for a painting by a female artist.
A long time coming.
A very long time coming. It signifies a crucial, necessary shift in the art market's long overdue valuation and recognition of women's historical work.
And another cultural icon, Princess Diana, was honored this week in Paris, tied to a famous moment of defiance.
The Grevin Museum in Paris unveiled a new wax figure of Princess Diana in her iconic revenge dress, the low-cut black silk dress she famously wore in 1994, symbolizing her defiance immediately following Prince Charles's admission of infidelity.
The unveiling also coincided with a piece of cultural commentary.
Yes, it coincided with the publication of the book Diana-rama, which critiques the manipulation involved in her infamous 1995 Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, reigniting the ethical debate about media intrusion and the exploitation of public figures.
Finally, in the world of sports, we had drama and a clash over fan rights. Let's start with the Ashes cricket series in Australia.
The Ashes series began dramatically in Perth, where the first day saw a stunning 19 wickets fall, an almost unbelievable pace of play.
And England did well.
England's performance was sensational, led by Ben Stokes, who delivered a high-energy, aggressive bowling performance that completely dismantled the Australian batting lineup, making for truly electric viewing.
And on the fan rights front, a familiar conflict between corporate control and digital expression.
European football's governing body, UEFA, ordered Scotland fans to remove World Cup qualification celebration videos from X, formerly Twitter, claiming copyright infringement.
That's a classic friction point corporate media control versus authentic fan expression.
It is frustrating for fans. The debate pits intellectual property protection UEFA controlling its content rights against the rights of individual fans to capture and share authentic moments of collective joy on social platforms.
That brings us to the close of this comprehensive deep dive.
We truly have spanned the scale of existence this week. From the stunning discovery of the Greater Pleiades complex, now found to contain over 3,000 stars, to the existential granular mystery of the ultra-low velocity zones beneath our feet that may have sparked life.
We've covered a lot.
We've wrestled with the life-saving potential of synthetic universal blood and the chaotic, urgent failure of global diplomacy at the COP30 climate talks.
It all distills down to context. You, the listener, should care about every single piece of this puzzle because gaining this context allows you to understand the world's functional mechanics.
Exactly.
You can now connect why a U.S. executive order removing a tariff on Brazilian beef might impact your grocery bill, or why a local D.C. legal fight over the National Guard fundamentally defines the limit of presidential power over domestic forces for every city in the country.
Every granular detail connects to the undeniable, often volatile, global picture. And that leads us to our final thought for you to consider this week.
What have you got?
When the leaders of the world at COP30 cannot agree to explicitly include a roadmap for transitioning away from fossil fuels in the draft resolution, despite overwhelming scientific consensus and escalating environmental disasters, does the responsibility for systemic change shift entirely from governments to the global business and technology sector?
A big question.
If politics fails to act, who is truly equipped financially and structurally to impose the necessary speed and scale of the energy transition? Something to think about until the next deep dive.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.